Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Make sure you smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we have to talk about a very important development. This does tie into what happened last week at the local level in the state of Texas, particularly South Texas, and what drastic developments we're seeing among Latino voters in the United States actually embracing Trumpism in fairly large numbers, and why this should worry Democrats. I'm going to be giving a rundown of it all, but first I do have to tell you guys about my good friends over at Noble Gold. So you don't get the chance to buy sunken treasure every day, do you? Because Noble Gold has secured some of the original $20 Liberty Gold coins found in the wreck carried up from the SS Central America on the seabed. The fabled ship of gold sank in 1857, along with 10 tons of California gold rush treasure. Imagine you could have a chunk of this exclusive time capsule from the depths yourself now. Call Noble Gold at 877-646-5347 to reserve your treasure, or submit a request from the link in the description below. So Donald Trump got 35% of the Latino vote in the 2020 election. Now, keep in mind the exit polls are awful this year. CNN had him down at, I believe, 32% or so, but looking at the precinct level data, I think 35% actually seems quite about right, and that is a big improvement. Now, there were signs of this happening in 2018, where the national environment at the congressional level took a sharp 7 to 8 point turn to the left, but still Republicans gained in places like South Texas, South Florida, even, Hispanic communities in places like Arizona, and even in some places in California, you saw these massive gains, mainly among Mexican Americans, but also among Cubans and Venezuelan Americans and other Central and South American groups. And as a result, Donald Trump, despite not really making that much of an outreach in 2020, he focused a lot of time on the black community, and he probably gained about 1 to 2% with black voters. But Latino voters, he did a little bit of outreach. There were ads that occasionally ran, and ultimately speaking, without really much effort, he jumps up into the mid to high 30s, and in Texas, he was very well pushing 40, probably in the low to mid 40s with Latinos in the state of Texas. Now, this is a very big deal because Democrats have spent the past few decades trying to import many voters from Central America into America, mainly because it benefits them electorally. That's why the so-called former party of the working class is embracing mass immigration and de facto open borders. It's clear why they want to give amnesty. It's not because they care about these people. It's because they want voters. Now, the problem is that second generation, third generation, we're seeing assimilation, and the fact that the Republican Party is becoming a more working class yet culturally conservative party, that definitely tells us that something is up here. And you are seeing it backfire to a certain capacity. Doesn't mean Latinos are all going to vote Republican overnight, but you're seeing signs of a realignment that we had seen in places like the Midwest. Now, people try to claim that Donald Trump was like the worst man ever for Hispanic voters, that he was evil, that he was racist, that he didn't like them or something like it. But guess what? The Chad Mestizo nationalists just didn't care. They didn't care whatsoever. And they broke for Donald Trump in numbers like we haven't seen before. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't think Republicans are going to win the Hispanic vote overnight. As I said, I don't know if they'll win it in the near future, but we're going to talk about why this realignment is changing. But I just wanted to look and show you guys where the shift was. Looking at the change map on the precinct level from 2016, like Florida, South Florida, and it's not just Cuban Americans. A lot of that is Mexican Americans, Venezuelan Americans. These precincts move right by like 40 points all across Miami. Even like urban Miami shifting vastly to the right. This is a county where Rubio and DeSantis may very well win next fall in the state of Florida, especially at the rate that the Florida Democrats are going at. But look at South Texas. I mean, these precincts in these counties, Trump flipped Zapata County, I believe, that has never gone Republican in a very, very long time. Trump got 33% of the vote in Zapata County last time, and that was an improvement over Mitt Romney. But now he flipped the county with a surge of turnout. The surge of Latino turnout in Texas that the Democrats and the election prediction mafia were talking about and saying that it would benefit them actually came back to bite them in the rear end, and Trump won the state of Texas by a likely margin. I mean, look at Houston. That's a lot of red shift in a lot of the Hispanic areas in Houston. You see it not just in Houston, but in parts of Dallas. And you saw it in the special election that happened where the Republicans outperformed Trump by like 22. And you go over to like Las Vegas, Clark County moved to the right despite it being very urban and suburban. A lot of shift in Las Vegas, the city of Las Vegas. In many Hispanic areas, even in North Las Vegas. I mean, if you look at the map here, Trump, obviously he lagged behind, but still massive, massive improvements in a lot of these precincts. Los Angeles County, Trump in LA County, that's a lot of red shift even in California, and you see it across the entire country. Denver may have been the only exception, but that's mainly because of white college-educated voters who live in those precincts. But even like Iowa, like Storm Lake, Iowa, which has become a small city that has a large Hispanic population, even there you see 15-point shifts to the right in some precincts. Even in like Toledo, Ohio, of all places, you see the same thing happening, plus 31. And Philadelphia, the Bronx, you see these massive movements all across the country to the right. This is not a South Texas phenomenon. Obviously, South Texas is where it's starting. I mean, you see the most red in South Texas. You see the most red in Miami-Dade, obviously. But that doesn't mean that the trend and the shift did not occur nationwide, because it absolutely did. And why is that? People are going to say, well, why is this happening? Like, this is not exactly a group that has been very favorable to the Republican Party. I mean, Bush did fairly well with them in 2004, but he won the popular vote. He had a lot going for him, and he had the Hispanic media on his side. He had a very, very intensive Hispanic outreach, and he did very well with Hispanic Protestant voters. Now, Trump's gains were also with Hispanic Catholics as well. And I think of what's going on in places like Michigan, where you see, in 2016, a lot of these like white Catholic areas across like upstate New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, even like western Wisconsin that have never gone red are like completely Republican strongholds. Now, a lot of these places never went Republican, but a lot of that red shift is in, white Catholic type of areas. And you may see a similar shift with, conservative religious values with Hispanics. Most Hispanics are pro-life. I think they're the only ethnic group that is 50% pro-life. You have Democrats out here embracing late-term abortion. That's not going to go over so well. Hispanics are buying guns at record margins. Democrats are trying to change the Spanish language because they think it's sexist. They're offended by it. They say Latinx, Latinos are Latinx. By the way, like 1% to 2% of Latinos actually use the term Latinx. I find it quite ironic. You talk about the fact you have an assault on a language, and you expect these people that have spoken it to just randomly just fall in line just overnight. Not exactly how it works. You see the pandering to BLM throughout the 2020 election. BLM not very popular among the Hispanic community. In fact, 42% of those who voted for Biden who were Hispanic had an unfavorable opinion of Black Lives Matter. If Trump went harder on that issue, if Trump didn't try to be, a fence sitter, and he didn't try to play both sides of the whole BLM issue, he probably would have gotten even more of the Hispanic vote in the 2020 election. And that kind of goes to show why it's important to have conviction, why it's important to stand your ground. Now, obviously, exit polls have flaws. Don't get me wrong. But even if that number is like 25, 30, I mean, that's a massive, massive number of Latino Democrats who oppose BLM. That's the type of demographic we should be going after, trying to add to the coalition. I mean, you look at this right here. A lot of these people in the so-called conservative, internet sphere are trying to pander to this group down here, the libertarians. There's nobody in that quadrant. No. Now, some of the new right, quote-unquote new right or populist Inc. individuals want to appeal to people like down here, like that are super far left economically and not really that conservative socially. No, what we need to appeal to is right where the base is. You have a lot of blue dots, slightly left of center on this chart. Obviously, up here is, when it comes to social issues, the American identity. This is like conservatism right here, socially, when you get closer to 1. But you have a lot of left-wing people economically that care about things like protectionism on trade. They want better health care. They want better infrastructure. And those are the voters that Republicans should be trying to add to their coalition. I'm not telling people to go super left economically, obviously, but I'm saying that there are a lot of people which economic populism resonates with, whether it's things like small businesses, supporting deregulating small businesses to allow them to grow, and it's, being tough on big tech, these mega corporations that infringe on people's rights, or when you're talking about the politicians of being a part of the establishment just being so out of touch with the ordinary American people, being so out of touch with the American worker and having essentially a two-tiered political system, one for you and one for the political elite in this country and the donor class. That's what Trump ran on in 2016, and it really did resonate with a lot of voters who were to the left of that middle line there on economic issues, and a lot of Hispanics are. Most Hispanics are socially relatively conservative. I mean, 32% of Hispanics are socially conservative, 31% are moderate, 30% are liberal. Now, there are more liberal Hispanics and less conservative Hispanics compared to the general population. However, there are many issues where Hispanic Democrats are a lot more socially conservative than white Democrats. BLM, for example, abortion, for example, the alphabet stuff, for example. Yeah, run Caitlyn Jenner, right, in California for governor, in a state that's electorate is plurality Latino. It's like the Republican establishment is just off the rails when it comes to strategy. In fact, they should be running like a based Hispanic who supports the bread and butter kitchen table issues if they want to win California. Somebody like Mike Garcia, but probably a little bit more moderate if you want to win California. That type of candidate would do fairly well. But in terms of economic issues, we always look at the charts that say Hispanics have favored a bigger government with more services. Even Hispanic Republicans have. Well, Donald Trump did not run a campaign that was of a small government like Ted Cruz conservative, or even like a Bush conservative in the past. He's actually favored some form of, protection for Social Security and entitlement programs and some form of a healthcare plan. Obviously, he didn't deliver much on healthcare, but Republicans need to continue to talk about these issues because they do matter, and you can expand the coalition. You talk about things like welfare. Well, instead of saying we're going to get rid of all of it or we're going to privatize everything, we need to say, okay, well, we're going to reform the system to make it pro-family for everybody, and what we are going to do is we are going to make sure that people do not abuse the system. That needs to be the messaging. Like, that's definitely something that can resonate, but you do have a lot of room for growth is what I'm saying. You talk about the economic issues. Look at the, average income of Hispanics now. It's going up significantly. It is roughly reaching $50,000, if not higher, per year. If you look at places in the Midwest, the rural Midwest, a lot of these white areas, these majority white counties down here, like Jackson County, for example, the average income there is like below $50,000. There's a very similar, socioeconomic situation between the white working class and Latinos. Many Latinos are also culturally conservative on many issues, and obviously it might not be 50%, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And I'm not going to say that we should pander. I'm not going to say that we need to spend all of our resources doing Latino outreach, but I'm saying if we stick to our convictions, we are going to get more and more Latinos in the process. People are going to say, well, what about immigration, right? What about immigration? Because that is an issue. And you look at the fact that Democrats want to pour in 1 million immigrants a year that vote 80-20, 70-30 Democrat, and the fact that they want to give amnesty to 11 plus million illegal aliens. Obviously, this is an issue that Republicans should not shy away from. Because being pro-DACA or being pro-amnesty or being pro-mass immigration is not going to help them with Hispanics. I mean, McCain was essentially in lockstep, if not to the left of Obama, on immigration, and he got far less than Donald Trump got in the 2020 election. Same thing with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was not exactly some, firebrand on immigration when he got, 26, 27% of the Hispanic vote. He got some ridiculously low number with them. Donald Trump comes out and he essentially says he wants to cut legal immigration, he wants to reduce illegal immigration, and after cutting legal immigration by 50%, in his first term, he comes away with record numbers of Latinos. Obviously, people are going to say, but Bush, maybe Bush did a little bit better, but the 40% exit poll number is disputed. And when you look at precinct level data, Donald Trump outperformed George W. Bush in many places, even in his home state of Texas. When you consider, the statewide trend into effect, he did even much better than George W. Bush did. So Republicans and conservatives need to not cave on the issue of immigration. Latinos want a tighter labor market. They do. When you have a tighter labor market, you are going to have increased levels of wages. Typically, when you focus on growth of small businesses, that is going to be something that resonates with Latinos, which disproportionately own small businesses. Now, the lockdowns arguably helped Trump with Latinos too. But that doesn't necessarily mean that just because the COVID issue is going away, that the Republican support is going to dip, because we did see signs of it happening in 2018. And Trump likely would have made those same gains in 2020 if COVID never exactly happened. So that is something to keep in mind. So what is to expect for the future? Well, it does rest on several factors, obviously. But you look at this chart here, there's a lot of Latinos right here that are in blue that can easily and potentially will easily turn into red dots if this continues, whether Trump runs again or it's somebody like Ron DeSantis who is a Catholic. He may have even more Hispanic appeal based off of that fact alone. But also look at rates of assimilation. I mean, if you look in 2016, English-dominant Hispanics voted for Hillary Clinton by just 7 points. The bilingual and Spanish voters voted 80-11, and maybe the Hispanic advertisements did kind of help Trump this time around with that second demographic. And even though I believe that everybody should speak English, I believe that English should be the official language of the United States, obviously, I do believe that it doesn't hurt to have a few ads in Spanish here and there, because those ads were hilarious. Those ads were just a meme. And the yo voy a votar por Donald Trump, definitely it helps. And you see this in places like McAllen, Texas, where the conservative mayoral candidates combined for nearly 45% of the vote. If you want to look at McAllen in the 2020 election, even they outperformed Trump. Going down to McAllen, you see a lot of blue here. A lot of McAllen voted 65-35 for Joe Biden. And in 2016, it voted roughly 75-25 plus for Hillary Clinton. So you're seeing a realignment in real time. I mean, Hidalgo County, Trump got 41% of the vote. That's not much less than what Bush got there. And I think Trump did better with Latinos in the county than Bush. And if you look at this trend, and you look at this, and if this continues in any reasonable capacity, that all these counties in South Texas that are blue, what's ever left of them, will become red. And you look at the Hispanics in the suburbs. I mean, Harris County, which is Houston, I believe it's the largest county in Texas. Now, Harris got bluer by just 1.3%. The nation moved to the left by 2.4%. So the county trended right by 1.1%. And even in places like Tarrant County and Denton County, Trump did better than Ted Cruz did in 2018. I'm not saying Democrats are maxed out in these places, because I think in Dallas they have, even more room to grow. But even if you moved all these counties to the left by like 15 points, the state would not go blue. Texas is going to stay red, in my opinion, until like 2032, 2036 maybe, if not even longer, because we really can't predict the future. But what I will say is that the Hispanic coalition is becoming increasingly Republican in this country, and Democrats have nobody to blame except for themselves. Now, that doesn't mean we should support mass immigration, because that will dilute any gains that we've made overnight, and a lot of Hispanic voters like the tighter labor market. That needs to be the messaging going forward in places like Texas, because definitely the cultural issues, the immigration issue, I think it's a winning issue for Republicans with Latinos. Amnesty, if you give amnesty, you're even going to lose support. So stick to your convictions. Don't take the wrong message from this. But the main point is that the Democrats could be in a whole lot of trouble in the near future. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please smash that like button down below, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.